My guest today, Tiffany Marler, exhibits everything that we want to see out of a 15-minute miracles. She is incredible and she is resilient, and her story is one that definitely needs to be heard. Listen to her now on 15minutemiracles.com.
We don't
We don't even know that. I believe God put us together, honestly.
I think so too.
And I am a trauma survivor.
Okay.
I went through a lot of trauma growing up. I was I'm going to be blunt about it. I was sexually molested and trafficked by my stepfather from about from 6 to 10 years old, and between Illinois and Missouri.
From 6 to 10 years old.
Yes, sir.
What years would that have been?
That was about 1981 to 1985, I guess.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And
tell me how you survived that.
My father actually took me out of state, re-enlisted in the military, and got me as much help as he possibly could. I mean, back then we knew what molestation was.
Right.
I was going to counseling for my parents' divorce at the time, and these people came to school and told us all about, if someone's touching you in the wrong way, you need to tell someone. So I did. I just automatically did. And it was a big blow to our family. We didn't know what trafficking was back then.
Right. Sure.
So that didn't come out till I was an adult, and we're still working through that. He hasn't been charged with that yet. We're still working with the Missouri.
Right.
Well, I'm still working with Missouri legislators on how to do this, get him, convicted for that. But I didn't understand at 10 years old, what taking me across state lines was back then.
Sure, yeah.
But it led for, my father took me away, and tried to just get me the help that he could. But in all honesty, even my parents didn't have the right coping skills to know how to help me back then. So I really didn't get the right help that I needed. But what he did was he delved me into my books. He delved me into schoolwork. He delved me into as much, teaching me how to be strong, teaching me how to survive. And
when you say he, do you mean your dad?
My father,
okay.
Yes.
And so where was your mother in all this?
Back here in St. Louis. My mother, she was abused as well, physically abused by this man.
Right.
So she did not have the right coping skills either.
Sure.
She had become pregnant by this man, and I have a wonderful, wonderful little sister by him, obviously.
Very.
But at the time, this was back in 1988 when she was born. So my mother was still under the abuse of this man. So my father had to take me away. My mom, this man had only spent about 6 weeks in jail for what he did to me in Illinois. He was charged and convicted in Illinois. He's never been charged in Missouri. Okay. So, my mom took him back, but she didn't know. She didn't know. Me and my mother are good now. But there was a lot of animosity with me growing up towards my mother.
I imagine so.
A lot of turmoil growing up with my mother.
When you say trafficked, tell me exactly what you mean. Just so people know.
My stepfather, he had me sleep with not only him, but other teenagers, other children.
Oh,
he would have us do things together. He would have us
girls, boys, who was the others?
Girls and boys, yes.
Oh.
It did not matter to him. And I'm not going to name names.
Right.
But he's a very sick individual. And Unfortunately, because he was not convicted of any of this, in 2014 in the state of Missouri, I was in Florida at the time healing from yet another trafficking scenario, which is what I'm known for now. I've gotten the correct help now, hence why we'll get into this. But in 2014, I was in Florida healing from my ex-husband in 2011.
Right.
I was trafficked in St. Louis.
Wow.
It's called domestic trafficking. In 2011, for 3 months when my ex-husband was in prison, he and his cohort of gang affiliates kept me in a house off of Pennsylvania Avenue in St. Louis for 3 months. And no one knew where I was, but I was right here in St. Louis, and I was being held in a crack house that was being used for human trafficking.
Wow.
And I got out of it. My father helped me get out of it.
Wow. Your father, again, what's his name?
My father, he passed away in November of 2018, but his name's James Marler. And I'll tell you what, he was the light of my life.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, some people don't believe the stories, because they're so remarkable. They're so you just can't. Honestly, they're like lifetime stories with
Yes,
with
they
us.
are.
They really are. But to survive something like this and to become an advocate in this field is something that I have PTSD. I have anxiety.
Yes.
But to become a voice for thousands of people that are still in this, what we call a silent epidemic, is something that I just had to do. I have 2 children that were affected by this as well. Okay. And I had to come back and I had to be better for them, not only for myself, but for them.
Definitely.
My whole family was affected by this. My family had no clue what was going on in my home with my ex-husband. They, after that happened to me in 2011, my ex-husband came home from prison in 2012, back to our home.
What was he in prison for?
A year.
What was he in prison for?
Oh, I'm sorry. At that time, he was in prison for, I think, drugs.
Okay.
And then in 2012, he came home, and it got really bad in our home.
Okay.
And it got so bad, too, as that he was beating me, and I had a seizure one night in the car, and we got back to the house, and I don't know, I had been sober from drugs for 8 years.
Okay.
From my first ex. And that was my son's father.
Right.
And he told me to suck. I thought he was giving me a drink of soda,
Okay.
My eyes were closed, no problem. But it wasn't. It was methamphetamines. Oh, and it was a straw with methamphetamines, and that was my drug of choice back 8 years before that. Right. So, and when you're an addict and you have a drug of choice, once you taste it, that's all it takes.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that's all it took. Well, that led to months and months and months of me being dependent on him for that.
Right.
Well, it led to more abuse. He's very narcissistic. He was very controlling, very I was his object of affection, or just possession. He had me tied to my bed. I chained to my bed. I couldn't see my kids. My older sister, eventually figured out what was going on. I had called DFS, CPS in 2013 in October, tried to get my kids out of the house. My kids had come to me and told me that somebody was touching them. I didn't know what to do. And eventually, I got my kids out of the house. But my sister had called in November of 2013 as well. And we just, nobody knew what was going on. All they knew was they were looking at it from the outside. They had no clue that I was being injected with drugs tied to my bed.
Right.
That they didn't know that my son at the time, who was 10, was seeing mommy, what he called having sex parties, is what he told the individuals, the authorities. But what it was is I was being drugged unconscious. Now that we have the records by my ex with heroin and other drugs, I've never taken heroin, but they found it in my system.
Wow.
But I was unconscious, being filmed. The films were put on pornography websites, and I never, to this day, this was in 2012, 2013. I still, to this day, don't know who these men were. But I was gang raped. This man was sick, and he is still running around to this day with this woman who held me captive in that house in 2011. Yes, on the streets.
Wow.
So when people say there's justice for the victims, that does not always happen.
Right.
So my justice that I get out of this is I opened my own nonprofit.
Tell me about
sexual trafficking victims, and I
Tell me about that. What is that called?
It's called No More Tears 21-4. We are a nonprofit here in Missouri.
Okay.
I started working with legislators back in 2016 when I got back to Missouri. I figured that, the truth had to come out. My kid, my son started acting up. He started getting older, started getting into trouble. My sister, who is the daughter of the man who molested me as a kid, she actually has adopted my daughter, who is the product of my ex-husband.
Right.
Yes, I live like a mile down the street from her, but it was in the best interest of everyone involved that I let her raise my daughter, because not every family's perfect. And when trauma is inflicted on a family like this, I work with children who are in the foster care system every single day. And there was no way in hell I was going to let my kids go into that system.
Right.
I actually set precedents in the Missouri court systems by being an individual that came back and fought for her kids as hard as I did. Because now with HB 397, which is my bill that Mary Elizabeth Coleman actually took to the Senate floor.
Okay, great.
In 2018, exactly, we were able to set new statutes and limitations and precedents for children in this state, where we were able to allow that any child that had prostitution charges on their records to be able to get those expunged now when they got charged with it, when they were being forced into this, horrible thing.
Horrible.
And then now I'm working with so many different organizations, and I've gained a lot of notoriety in this field, And what our goal is with No More Tears, we have a goal. We really do. We're trying to gain our investors. Right now we're a 529C nonprofit, because we're only allowed to work within the realms of Missouri, because we're trying to gain enough notoriety and investors to allow us to get our 501c3. Because right now I've been working with Veterans for Child Rescue for the past few years. And they are a nationally accredited nonprofit, 501c nonprofit, and they are wonderful, wonderful in this field. And our goal is we are going to open a ranch here in Missouri. And it's going to be for boys and girls. See, we have a lot of places, a lot of facilities here in Missouri that are for 18 and up, or specifically designed for just females or youth girls. And a lot of people don't understand that this disease, this epidemic affects young men and boys as well.
To hear more awesome God stories and other things as well, please tune in to 15minutemiracles.com.